I'm trying to get a jump on Thanksgiving this year. I'm going to do something today that I've never done before. Well, I'm telling a story there. I have done it. I tried it over the weekend and it worked out pretty good. I'm going to make rolls and I'm going to freeze them. Now typically I make rolls for Thanksgiving and Christmas for my family. I really don't make them any other time of the year, even though we all adore them. I've always joked and said I wouldn't be welcome to our Thanksgiving or Christmas unless I had my rolls. They are so good. I've been making them for many, many years now. And I actually found the recipe in a Southern Living magazine way back. Miss Cindy, Matt's mother that died this summer. You know, Thanksgiving's kind of hard without her, but so many things, of course. She touched our lives in so many different ways. But this is another way. When I was, me and Matt were first married, and then I had Corey and Katie, and I stayed at home with them. I was a stay-at-home mom. She was always worried about me, being maybe lonely or worried that I didn't get out and those kind of things. So she started gifting me any kind of magazine subscription I wanted. I think I chose like Country Living and Southern Living. You could probably figure that out. Anyway, this recipe was in a Southern Living magazine, and I read it, and I've always been a real lover of bread. I love cornbread, I love biscuits, but I love any kind of yeast bread, even light bread. I just really like bread. I know it's not that good for you, people say, but it's just one of my favorite things. So when I saw this recipe, it had brown sugar in it and oatmeal, and I thought that just sounds really good. I wonder if it would be good. So I tried it, and me and Matt just adored it. And then that first year I made it for Thanksgiving. People wanted me to make it again. I made it for Christmas. I've been making it ever since then. And the recipe was actually, I cut it out. This is one of my recipe books. When I'd cut things out of magazines or somebody jot something down for me, I paste it just in one of these notebooks like this. So this is one of my cookbooks that I've got stuff wrote in, but also just pasted in. So I cut the recipe out of that magazine all those years ago and just pasted it in my book. I will link to it in the description below so that you can go and actually read, and you won't have to jot all this down if you don't want to. But anyway, it was submitted to the Southern Living magazine by Carol Barclay, Portland, Texas. And I won't read you about the little intro it has there, but it does tell you that if you wanted to use it for cinnamon rolls, it's also actually good for that too, and it is, because I've done that, and it makes good cinnamon rolls. Anyway, so I've been making them all that time, and I'll go over the ingredients in just a minute. But I've never thought about making them ahead of time. Now, of course, I could make them the day before Thanksgiving, Christmas Eve, whenever, but they're so much better when they just come out of the oven. I just think they're so good. So typically what I do is I get up early, of course, on Thanksgiving and early on Christmas morning, and I start the rolls and I make them. And it's, then you think about the rising, and you got to have the oven, and you got to let them rise again. There's 2 risings, and it's just really puts a time crunch on things, but that's just the way I've always done it, and I've never even thought about doing it another way until this year. Well, actually last year's the first year I thought about it actually trying to freeze bread. Was Matt got me to freeze some of my biscuits for him and Papa to take deer hunting. It worked so well. I did it again this year. I've got a video about that, so I'll share that link if you didn't see it. But that worked out so well, and I started thinking, well, I wonder if I could do my rolls like that. And if I did, it would just give me all that extra time on Thanksgiving morning or Christmas morning to be doing other things, or, it wouldn't tie up the oven so long. Anyway, so I started thinking about that. I shared that thought in a video, and several of you said, yes, you can do that. You should do it. So over the weekend, I made a single run of rolls and tried it. I cooked some for us. I think I made them on Friday, so I cooked some for us and then put the rest in the freezer, and then on Sunday afternoon after church I got them out and I let them fall and let them rise, and then I baked them, and they were really good. They were really good. I was like, how did it take me so long to think of doing this? I knew that you can buy like Parker House rolls that come just in the little globs of dough, and then you let them rise and bake them. I knew you could do that. I just never thought about doing it myself with this recipe. So this year I'm going to try it, not just a test run on us. I'm going to do it, and we're going to see how it goes on Thanksgiving. I think it'll be fine though. I think it will be. So I'm going to go over the ingredients in the recipe, but again I will link to it in the description below. So oatmeal dinner rolls is the name of it. And I'm making a double batch. I'm doing doubling everything because of it being Thanksgiving, and I'll have so many people here, and pretty much every roll usually gets eat, and if they don't, then people divvy them up to take them home with them. So I'm doubling the recipe. So if you notice that you're thinking, well, that looks like more than what you said, Tipper, it's because I'm doubling it, but I'm going to give you the original recipe. So it's 2 cups of water, 1 cup of quick cooking oats, 3 tablespoons butter or margarine, I always use butter, 2 1/4 ounce envelopes of active dry yeast. I buy my yeast like in a larger container than the little envelope, so I figured out along the way that each packet of yeast equals 2 1/4 teaspoon of yeast, and you can Google that and find it. But anyway, it needs 2 1/4 ounce envelopes active dry yeast, 1/2 cup warm water, that's to activate the yeast, 1 tablespoon sugar, again with the yeast. Then you need 4 cups all-purpose flour, 1 1/2 teaspoons salt, and 1/3 cup firmly packed brown sugar. That's all the ingredients. Again, I'm going to double it since I've got so many people coming and everybody loves my rolls. But first, the first step is we're going to actually cook the oatmeal. So I've done got my water measured out. I'm going to put it in my pan here. Add in my oatmeal. And then add in my butter. And I'm going to take it over to the stove and just going to cook it. Bring it to a boil, let it boil a minute, and then it's done. And then you need to let it cool a little bit. So many times on Thanksgiving and Christmas morning, I'm in a hurry, like I said, trying to hurry. So I usually cook it, and then instead of just letting it cool down on the stove, because I'm hurrying, I take it outside and set it on my back deck just so it'll hurry up and cool down a little bit. But I'm going to take it over to the stove now and get it started. Okay, the oatmeal is boiling, and I'm going to let it boil for 1 minute, and then we'll set it aside and let it cool slightly. The oatmeal's been cooling a little bit in the pot, and now I'm going to put it out into this bowl just so it can cool faster. While the oatmeal continues to cool, we're going to mix up the yeast, the water, and the sugar. So I'm going to go ahead and put my yeast in. You want to use something that's, even if you do the single recipe, you need to use something that allows for the yeast to rise up, or if not, it'll all run out on you. So there's my yeast. Go ahead and add my sugar, and then the water, and it needs to be warm water. Give it a quick little stir. And now just let it sit for about 5 minutes. So now that my yeast has rose, I'm ready to start mixing it all together. The original recipe says you can use a mixer, and I do that a lot, but the last 2 or 3 years I've not, because you can mix it to a certain point, especially in the beginning when you're first putting in the yeast and the brown sugar, but then as you begin adding flour, it just gets, you know how it'll do if you've ever tried to mix a dough. It just gets, even with your dough hook, this is so much, it won't fit into my KitchenAid. You might have a bigger mixer and it might be fine. But for me, I eventually have to take off the mixer and just use, my hand. So the last 2 or 3 times I've made rolls, I've just went that route and not even fooled with getting the mixer out. So first we're going to add, though, our brown sugar. That's all of it. Our salt. Got me, stir that up some, and that'll again help. Which I think the oatmeal, I've been doing a few other things. I think the oatmeal's cooled now. And the original recipe, the links that I'll link to, tells you, I think it's 110 or something you're supposed to let it cool to. So got that mixed in. And I'll add the the yeast, which is just getting bigger and bigger there. I love these big 8-cup measuring, I guess this is made by Pyrex, probably Anchor, and different people make them, but I love these. They're so handy for things like this that you need to measure, and I use it all the time. And I used to have 2 of them. Miss Cindy got me both of them. And when Corey got married and moved out, I let her have 1 of them. So I just have 1, but I know Miss Cindy had 1, so I suppose I'll end up with another one. I'll have 2 again, and again, they will have all come from Miss Cindy. So now that I've got all that mixed in, I can start adding the flour. I'm gonna get me a little cup to do that with. I've got it all measured out here, but I'll just start adding a little at a time. And again, I'm doubling the recipe, so that's why it looks like there's so much more. The more you add, the harder it gets to actually stir it up, and eventually I just have to start using my hands. I think I've about reached that point. I usually knead it a little bit in the bowl, and then I have to get it out before I get it out to actually do some kneading. And you know, if you've made bread before, like most recipes, that was a double, like I said, a double recipe, so that was double the amount of flour, but I can tell I'm going to need more flour. So sometimes, I don't know, if I mismeasure, if it depends on the other ingredients or what happens, but sometimes seems like it takes more than what I usually use, and then sometimes it seems like it takes less. But so you just need to have additional on hand in case you need it. I'm definitely going to need it this time. I'll probably even need more than that, but give me some room. And then I'm just going to start kneading it. If you've never kneaded bread before, I'm not an expert. I do enough to satisfy myself, but you can find all kinds of information about the best way to do it. But basically, you fold and turn. So I'm going to fold, and then I'm going to turn it. And then I'm going to fold, and I'm going to turn it. And with this much dough, it's much easier if you're just doing a single recipe, but I've done it so many times that I would rather do it all at once than do it individually. And you have to stop and get you some more flour. Maybe put a little bit more on top and just continue to knead. It's very therapeutic, kneading and making bread like this. I've made all kinds of bread over the years. As I said, I really love bread and love yeast breads. But this is by far our favorite recipe that I make. Now once I'm about there, once I get it kneaded till it's all come together, I'm going to put it in a bowl. I'm just going to use the same bowl that I had it in. I'm going to add some olive oil, grease the inside of the bowl, and then I'm going to cover it and let it rise. And that takes different times depending on how warm your house is. If we're running, having heat, I might put it someplace like near the stove if I'm cooking something else, so that has a lot of heat around it. Today I'm not really cooking anything else, and it's not warm enough to have a fire in the house, so there's not really much heat. But on the other hand, it's not really cold either. So it just depends on, if you put it in a cold place, it's going to take a lot longer. But if you have it where there's some warmth around it, it goes faster. And let me finish this and then we'll see. I'll read you what the recipe says. I've done it for so many years I don't even think about it, but let's see what they say about it. I think that's about good. Beautiful. Okay, got me some grease in there. Let me put my great old big piece of dough. I usually put it in there and then flip it over, and that way the top gets some grease on it. You can also just use your hands to pat it around good. Corey and Katie, when they were little especially, liked to help me with this part, because who doesn't like to play with dough? Okay, now I'm going to cover it and I'm going to move it over here out of my way, and then I'm going to get that recipe and read to you a little bit. Okay, now I was going to read to you what it said in the recipe. It says beat, the mixture just like we did, do all that, except of course it's saying you can use a mixer if you want to. Instead I just use my hands just because I think it's easier. But turn dough out onto a lightly floured surface, knead until smooth and elastic, about 5 minutes, place in a well-greased bowl, turn to grease top, cover and let rise in warm place, 85 degrees or more it says, free from drafts, 1 hour or until dough is doubled in bulk. Sometimes mine takes longer than an hour, depending, as I said, on the house. And then once that's done, I'll show you what to do next. In the meantime, I've got plenty to do for my hour or ever how long it takes. Another thing you can do sometimes, if I'm not cooking, like I'm not cooking anything right now, I might just put a little simmering water over there, just to heat up the area that the dough's in. A lot of people, a trick they use is to like turn the oven on and then turn it off and then put it in there, or even do it in the microwave. There's all kinds of tips and tricks. You can do a quick search and you'll find out all kinds of tips and tricks about making yeast breads, about rising and how to ensure it works and all that kind of stuff. But while it's rising, I'm going to clean up my mess. Well, I can't clean this up yet because I'm going to make my rolls right here. So I'm going to leave this exactly like it is. But it's time for me to do my kefir water. So I'm going to be doing that. And then I've got plenty of cleaning I need to do to get ready for Thanksgiving. You can see how the dough has rose up. Now we're ready to start shaping it into the rolls. Typically what I do is just pour it out on my, ought to get me some flour there. Pour it all out. You can hear the yeasty parts of it. Everybody has their own way of doing the actual making it into a roll. I sprinkle some flour out there, but this is just what I've learned that works for me over the years. I get a pretty good handful, depending on what size you want your rolls. And then I think of it as like tucking in. I just keep tucking in, tucking in, tucking in, tucking in. And then this side will be my actual roll, see? So then that's how you make them, or how I do it. I'm going to lay that one down. I'll do another one for you. So you just get, if you want really big ones, and you got to remember they're going to rise some, so keep that in mind. But then I just tuck in the edges there. Just keep tucking and tucking and tucking, and it kind of, I think of it as making almost a pin cushion, like in sewing, that if you were gathering all your cloth together and the inside was stuffed with cotton batting or something like that. And I mentioned this recipe can be used for cinnamon rolls too. Of course, if you were going to do that, you wouldn't do them in this shape. You would roll them out and put the filling on the inside, which is just, like a regular cinnamon roll. And I'm just putting them on this cookie sheet here, and I'm going to put them in the freezer. If I was about to bake them, I would grease this, and then I would let them rise, and I would put them in the oven. But since I'm going to put them in the freezer, I didn't put any grease down. I'm going to freeze them like this, and then probably tomorrow, when they're really good and solid froze, I'll get them out and put them in a bag and then put them back. And that way I'll have my cookie sheets ready on Thanksgiving morning, you know, to grease, and then set the rolls out and let them rise, and then bake. Okay, I got them all made out. Here's my last tray to go into the freezer. I ended up with about 45 rolls. Now, I make my rolls larger probably than most people. I think the recipe says a single recipe, like not doubling it like I did. I think it says it makes 32, but I like mine on the large side. We love to split them in half and put turkey or ham or whatever it is in the middle of them, make a little slider sandwich, I guess, and they're just so good. That we like to eat them with butter or plain. So I'm going to put these in the freezer. I'm going to clean up my mess, and then in a day or two I'm going to finish this video, because then I'm going to show you what they look like when they come out of the freezer and how I let them rise, and then we'll taste them. The frozen rolls have been rising for about 3 hours, maybe 4 hours, something like that. It'll really just depend on how warm your house is, or if you use any of the tricks to speed them up. But you can see they've really got larger. Now I'm going to put them in the oven and bake them at 400. When I make them this size, it takes about 20 minutes. If you make your rolls smaller, it might take less time. Then I'll show you how they turn out. Of course, I'm going to remove the plastic before I put them in there. Okay, every time I make rolls or any kind of bread, you gotta have one right away. Put some butter on it. So good. This roll is one of those that's kind of gets crunchy on the outside, chewy, I guess you would say, but really soft on the inside. And because of that oatmeal, and probably because of the brown sugar, it has kind of a nutty flavor. Hands down, the best roll that I've ever had in my life. I'm so glad that I found the recipe so many years ago, and I'm so thankful for the lady who submitted it to the magazine so that I could actually use it all these years and share it with my family. I'll leave the recipe link in the description below so you can go check it out. If you make them, I really hope you enjoy them. And I'm so excited this year that I've learned I can actually make them ahead of time, and they'll just be just as good as all those years that I got up early on Thanksgiving and Christmas and made them the day of. It'll just make a huge difference. It seems like I should have thought of that a long time ago, but for whatever reason I didn't. I'm glad I did now. And I'm always glad when you stop by to help me celebrate Appalachia.